All right, in this quick episode of making mirror of Maker's Mirror, excuse me, I'm going to talk about some experimental things that I'm doing over on my website today with some of my fiction because one of the big problems that I've encountered as a writer over the last couple of years is simply getting read. And I think I like a lot of other writers, especially as primarily a novelist or someone who writes books. Because writing, there's a lot of different definitions of writing these days. Of course, you could be a digital writer, you just write online. You could be a blogger, you can be an essayist. There's a lot of these on Substack, but because my focus tends to be writing books, it's I think of it this way. Books are probably one of the worst products in the internet age. And the reason why I say that is that they generally take a long time to write, a minimum a month if you're fast. They take a long time to consume. So when someone reads a book, it might take them anywhere from a day to a few months to read, depending on how they read and how fast or slow they read. Uh, they are not so easy to distribute in book form. You've got Amazon, and of course, if you want physical copies of books, then you've got to get them printed somewhere, and you've got to get them shipped, and then you've got to get them into people's hands. They're not so good with the internet age. So there's all these friction points, these problems with the model of books, and I've written a few now and published a few and distributed a few of my own over the last few years, and this continuous problem comes up over and over again. The first time I tried to tackle it was with my podcast because I was convinced that, well, my book's too long. It's nearly 500 pages. It's over 150,000 words. No one's going to take a chance on that on a no-name author. So I went on this odyssey to create the entire podcast version of it, and it did result in more people accessing the story. I'm not going to lie, but it also took 3 years to produce and an ungodly amount of time between the music, the voice acting, all of the sound, the editing. I I will probably never do a project that big again, knowing especially since I was learning that stuff as I was doing it. I didn't know how to do it. So here comes my thinking today when I'm trying to tackle this issue because like many other authors, my intent was you write a book and what do? You sell it. You put it on Amazon, you put it on your website, you put it on Gumroad as a complete book. That's that's how we think of books, right? You have the full book and you have somebody who wants to read it and then you sell it to them for some amount of money. The problem is, one thing I've noticed writing online for the last several years is that people are less and less likely to pay for straight up information. Just paying for information, like 5, 6 years ago, you could still get away with setting up a lead magnet and saying, hey, I'll teach you how to do this, or I'll show you how to do this narrow problem. But especially now in the era of AI, when anyone can really just spin up their own solution to anything, or they can not only query for answers, but they can get examples, they can get it adjusted to their level. That's a huge problem for storytellers because that brings me to the next point. Stories are just kind of a dime a dozen these days. I mean, what is YouTube if not billions of stories? I mean, from the personal to the wild and to the completely fictional. There's everything in between on YouTube. All you have to do is just go on there for free. And while still people do still pay for big stories, they'll pay to go see a movie or go see a show or something live or something like that. But the as the cost of production of these things has gone down, especially with AI now, then not only is there more of the stuff, but it's harder to convince people to let go of money to say, okay, read my novel. They will still do it, and people have bought my novel, but I'd argue it's a lot tougher to do that. So that brings me to my experiment today. There's two things that I'm experimenting with. One, I'm posting my entire story, the short story that I've been working on, Sinkhole. There's a link in the description if you want to check it out. I've posted the entire draft of it for free on my website. It's there. You can go and read it right now and check it out. Why am I doing this? Well, because I've shifted my focus, and if there's anything that I've learned a ton about business in the last, not just writing books, but about business in the last few years. And one of the things is having one goal, one main goal at a time. And then s- when you fill that goal to a satisfactory manner, then you move on to the next goal, and then the next and the next. And up to this point, my goal has been to write books and sell them in book form. But what if we kind of flip that model? Because there's less people willing to pay. I'm not completely unknown anymore. I have a growing YouTube channel. I have people on my email list who know of me. I've been on Substack. Like I've been at it for a couple of years now, so I'm not starting from complete zero. But I'm still I still don't have readers. I don't have regular readers of my fiction, and I think that's where I'm at this point. Is I know my writing is good. I know my stories are good. I know my characters are good. My ideas are good. I just need people to read it, and they are less likely to read it if it's behind a paywall. If it's wait till the whole thing's done and then buy it. So I'm taking this experimental approach, and I'm posting the entire thing on there. And I think for the next book that I write, which will be starting up hopefully before the end of this month, I need to start it, the prequel to Sirius and Limnic. I'll be doing the same with this too. Because right now the goal isn't to get money from my work. I've decided to walk back on that, and I still will. I think I'll set up some Gumroad donations because there are some people who, if they like things enough, they will donate. They will support. But I understand most people don't donate. They'll just people are so used to getting stuff for free these days. That's the other thing. You can, like I said, you can get whole games, whole stories, whole movies, whole anything you want just with an internet search. It's the reality we live in. So when you're making customized work, you have to take a different approach, and this is what I'm trying is putting this out there, and it's in its raw form. I'm still writing. I haven't even finished the complete story yet, but my hope is that even if it's unrefined and there's some typos and there's some loose ends and most of the story is done, but it's not fully complete. But that the goal isn't perfection. The goal is to get people to familiar with my style, with my writing, with my characters, with my stories, and hopefully they come back for more. And that's the first thing that I'm experimenting with. The second thing is an interesting thing because if you probably didn't hear my episode of Two Brothers Talking with my brother that we just did last week, but in it we talked a little bit about trigger warnings. And these are these things if you're not familiar. Long story short, these are warnings at the top of mostly fiction stories, or they can be in nonfiction as well, but at the top, and they basically tell you stuff that might trigger you. This has sexual assault. This has violence in it. This has foul language, that type of thing. Think of the warnings like on the back of video games and the ratings on movies, right? Books don't normally have this. Um, I'm not sure why. I mean, books normally, if you want to try out a book, the only preview you get is whatever the book blurb says, or if you're looking at a physical book, then you read the the back description, you read the cover, and then okay, you make your decisions from there. Most books don't have it has this, that. But I thought about it and I was like, I kind of talked about my view on trigger warnings and how it can be taken too far because pretty much anything can be triggering. depending on the person and the time of day and the situation. But I thought about it and I was like, this is another one of those barriers to reading fiction. And what got me was I was reading somebody else's, another author's short story on Substack the other day, and I started reading it and I liked it. I thought it was a good story, but I was discovering it as I was reading it. And of course, this is normal, but I was like, what if, like a movie, like a video game, there were there were not warnings, but just like a label on the story that said, "Hey, this is what you're gonna get." And so that's I've taken this idea, and if you go and check out Sinkhole right now, if you check the link after you listen to this or watch this, then you'll see I've put not only a summary of the whole story, but I've also put intended audience and information. Right? Who is this for? Um, and this particular story happens to be more female centric. It's a female, two female protagonists, and it just makes sense. I think women would get um, more out of this than a guy would. And a guy can like it too, but and that's just based on the characters. And then I went through a kind of a list of what's in the story. Like what type of contents are in it. Like if this was a nutrition package, this was a piece of food that you were going to buy at the store. What do we got on in there? And I put that list in there as well. And some of the things are, I wrote them to be kind of tongue in cheek, a little bit hilarious, but other things are, actual issues that the story contains. And why am I doing this? The whole goal of this is to, like other products online, is to give readers and consumers a better idea of what they're in for, because I feel like other products do this very well. It's in software, like I said, it's in movies, it's in video games, it's for sure in YouTube videos and a lot of social media content. That upfront, what's the exchange for time here? Is this for me? Because everybody's busy, right? And I'm using air quotes because I've talked about busyness before on my previous podcast. How busy is in the eye of the holder, right? You're busy watching YouTube videos and TikTok, not necessarily working and doing things like that. But anyway, everybody feels busy. They feel like they're when they're consuming something, there's always something else that's on the in the periphery of their mind, whether that's real work, something they have to do, family, whatever. And so our job, or I see it as my job as a creator, to make it as easy as possible for people to make that judgment call up front. Is this worth my time? Am I going to enjoy this? And if so, then I'm ready to dive in. And I think that's something that I've learned from my time on social media in business. I think it just makes sense in general to think that way, to respect your customers' time, and tell them clearly is something for them. And so that's the whole idea behind these two things. Trying out these, and then I have also ideal reading conditions. That was just another kind of silly thing that I made up, right? But it's just another thing to increase the immersion, that this is more than a story. Like, I'm actually thinking about this. This is not AI generated. This is a real story. This is a part of my main series, and I really want the right people to find it and enjoy it and give it a try. And so I don't know. Let me know what you think about this if you're a creator, and especially if you're a writer, because yeah, writers, especially of fiction, it's not so easy to get people. There's so much AI stuff. There's just so much stuff out there, and getting people to sit down and read you, if you're not a well-known name, is pretty hard. You have to do things differently. So that's the idea of this. I have other ideas to expand it in the future, but one step at a time, right? We'll see what happens.